Good morning, everyone. How you doing? Doing well today? My name is Kelly, and I'm one of the pastors here on staff, and I'm really excited that all of you are here. We are actually in the third and final week of our Me versus Me series, where we are talking about mental health. And what has been so awesome is throughout this series is to get the emails and have the conversations with those of you who have really been positively impacted by this series. We've heard people that are telling us they're finally making a counseling appointment for the first time in their life, and we've just heard of the impact of this, which is just even another reminder as to why this is such a vitally important topic to talk about. It's not talked about enough, and it is so important for us, especially in the church, where the church should be one of the safest places for people to be able to authentically be who they are. And that's really what we want to create here, is a space where people can say, I'm not okay, and I need help, and where we can come alongside each other and walk alongside each other as we journey. And the thing is, when we first started planning this series, the first thing that we talked about and the most important thing that we wanted to do was we knew we wanted to have a mental health professional come in to be able to talk to you. Because here's the thing. Those of us that get up here on Sundays and communicate from the stage, we're pastors, okay? So we can come alongside you, and we can pray for you, and we can try to encourage you, but at the end of the day, we are not therapists and counselors. We are not mental health professionals, and so we wanted to bring someone in today who is much smarter than we are and who is equipped and trained in this area to be able to share her expertise and her wisdom with you. So before, I don't want to go on anymore, because I want as much of the time as possible to go toward what she is going to share with you today. So we decided to invite a licensed clinical social worker from right here in Kyle to come and share with you this morning. So please give a huge round of applause for Lakeitra Priestley. Lakeitra, thank you so much for spending your Sunday morning with us and taking the time to come and share your wisdom with us. To get started, could you just take a moment and share with us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Good morning, Icon. Okay, there we go. I'm a clinical social worker here in town. I'm a wife and a mother. I have 3 kids, and I just really enjoy talking to people, getting to know them, and supporting and helping them through any kind of emotional or behavioral health crisis that they're going through.
Awesome. And can you tell us, how did you first become interested in social work?
I get this question a lot. It wasn't just one single thing that happened that kind of made me become a social worker. I grew up in government housing, so I had the experience of seeing lots of traumatic events. So witnessed physical abuse, sexual abuse, trauma, and social workers or people coming into the community removing kids. And one day, a social worker came, and she didn't take the kids. She worked with the family, she supported them, and that made me realize that this is what I want to do. In addition, I feel like just coming from my own perspective, I think God chose me for social work. It wasn't like I had an option. It was just what I was going to do from an early age. I knew this was what I would do.
You were just born for this. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. So talking about mental health, I do think that in some ways our culture has made some strides on this, but I think a lot of you would probably agree that there has a lot of times can be a certain amount of stigma surrounding issues of mental health, whether that's something that we kind of place on ourselves because we feel shame for it, or it's because just culture in general. So what would you say, as you've been practicing this and doing this work for a while, what would you say are some common misconceptions that people have when it comes to mental health?
I can't even tell you my own misconceptions. I knew that I was called to do this work, but I was like, therapists are nosy. They're just going to be in your business. They're going to tell their friends your business. There's no way, and only crazy people go to therapy. I know. And so I had to work through those misconceptions of my own. Therapy is not just a place for crazy people. Therapy does not mean that there's something really wrong with you or you're broken. It's just like you would have physical health issues, therapy is there for you to kind of support you through mental health issues as well.
Yeah, that's so good. You mentioned that you felt that God chose you for this work. So maybe you could share with us what are some ways that you feel like faith has impacted the work that you do?
For me, because I strongly believe that God put me in position to be a therapist, before I do any therapy every day, my prayer is that God, please use me as a vessel. Use me to support, to guide, to encourage. I know I can't fix someone's mental health, but I just want God to kind of be present with me in the session so that I do and say something that is helpful to the person I'm working with. I think faith is important when you're doing therapy, just because when someone comes to you and they have a faith base, you need to have a faith base too, right? If I can't tell you, or if I'm not really thinking about how God is using me, then I may guide you and teach you or tell you something wrong, and I want to be helpful and a vessel. Therapy, you use your therapist. And so I want God to use me, and then you use me, so I'm just in the room and present. And the work is really God working through me to help you.
That's really great. So kind of on this topic of faith, clearly we're in a church right now. And so for a lot of us in this room, would call ourselves Christians. We would identify that way. I know for me personally, and I don't know if you have come across this in your work, and I'm sure some people here have come across this, but I have at times been around Christians who've approached people who struggle with mental health and with a lot of like the Christian cliches. It's like, oh, well, you're depressed. Well, you just need to pray more. You just need to choose to have joy. You just need to, have faith to believe that God can heal you. And I have found that can actually be unhelpful. So maybe you can talk about some ways that is unhelpful, and then maybe give us a better way for us to be able to come alongside people as they're struggling.
Yeah, definitely. So I try to tell people, when you think of it in these terms, physical health and mental health kind of go hand in hand. If you were talking to someone who was a type 1 diabetic, would you tell them, well, you know what, you're just going to pray that diabetes away? No, you would say, okay, you need to go take your medicine, and we're going to pray that the medicine is effective. We're going to pray that God places a doctor in your life that's going to be able to help you. And so if you can think of mental health in the same terms that you think of physical health, you will understand that it's okay to say, hey, we're going to pray about this, but that's not the only solution. Just like you wouldn't give that to someone who has diabetes. Hey, that's your only solution. No, because then that person's not going to get the help that they need. So it's important to acknowledge faith and to use it as one of the tools in your toolkit. But our toolkit needs to include lots of other things, like medication sometimes is necessary, or sometimes it's just talk therapy that's necessary. Because when you just say, pray on it, then you're keeping that person isolated. And if I've been praying for 6 years and I'm still feeling sad, then that means there's something really wrong with me. Not that my emotional health could be the result of a physical ailment, or that I need medication because my body is not producing chemicals properly for me to feel better. So you want to try to, if you're going to tell someone, you need to pray about it, you also want to say, as we get in this car to go to this doctor, we're going to pray that we get an answer. We're going to pray that you can find a solution, because prayer is not just the only thing that can work. It's necessary, but we need to do other things to support it as well.
Oh, that's so good. That is so, I love how you said, while we get in this car and we drive to the doctor, we're going to pray about it. Yeah, because it goes hand in hand, Like I think sometimes as Christians too, we feel like if we do seek out help, that means that there's something wrong with our faith. It can feel like then that means we just don't believe enough, or we just don't pray enough. And like Lakeitra was saying, that's just simply not the case.
Yeah, it's really isolating too. So if you're in a community and everyone's saying, well, I prayed about it and it got better for me. Well, I'm praying and it's not getting better. That means I'm by myself in this. And when you're feeling depressed or anxious, or you have a struggle with PTSD, sometimes the mind is already playing the game with you to say, you are in this by yourself. No one's going to understand. So then when you tell me, well, I prayed and it worked, then you need to pray and it should work. And I'm thinking, I've been praying though. I've been asking God to fix it, and it's not fixed. So now I'm really alone. And so it keeps that PTSD symptom with higher power, and it gives the sadness even more power. So we want to avoid that by validating the person and encouraging them to get the support.
That's really good. And I love how you were talking about how that can make people feel isolated and how isolation can actually, contribute to making the problem greater. So given that fact, could you talk a little bit about, what would you say as far as because we're in a church and so we really believe in community and we believe in relationships and how important that is. How important would you say being in community and having people that walk down that road with you, how important would you say that is in someone's road to healing and mental health?
Oh, I think that's one of the top things that can support someone, right? So if I cannot feel alone and I can come to you and tell you my darkest secrets and not have you judge me, then I know I'm not by myself. I'm not broken. I'm not this entity that nothing can help or no one can fix. And so community is really, really important. And as a member of the community, it's equally important to know that you cannot control what someone else is feeling. You can't fix their emotion. You can validate it because they're feeling it. So it's real. You may not understand it. You may think, I don't get it. And that's okay. You can even acknowledge that part, but it's more about validating that person where they are. Social work has this saying, I'll meet you where you are. And if you can meet someone who is experiencing an emotional health crisis where they are, then you're going to do wonders for them because now they're not feeling like they're by themselves. You just go with them. I'll get in the dirt with you. That's really kind of what you want to say.
Yeah, and that just goes along with, we all the time talk about here how important it is that we want to enter into people's mess with them, and because think about it, gosh, in the times in my life when I have felt like things were a mess, I don't need someone to come in and fix it. I just need someone to give me the gift of their presence and to just say, I'm here, I'm with you, and I'm not going anywhere.
You matter. You are important and you matter in this, even with this sadness, you're still important. You matter is really the issue or the central thing that you want to share with someone when you're a member of their community.
Man, that's so good. I really hope some of you guys are taking notes today. Or if not, you can go back and watch it again and take notes because this is so helpful and this is so good for us to remember because again, there are people in this room that do battle with mental health, and then there's some of us in this room that don't have those struggles, but someone we love does. And so this is really helpful for us to know how to better come alongside and be that support system for people that need it. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit in our questions, but so this is something that I've been thinking about a lot when it comes to, because I have 4 kids, but one is a teenager, one is a preteen. And so we all know if you have teenagers or even kids that are younger than teens, we know that, phones and iPods and social media and technology and all of that is just, our kids are growing up in a totally different world than most of us grew up in. And I think a lot about that, and I've heard things about that. So I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about, and again, this isn't just for kids, because my goodness, I can scroll Twitter with the best of them, so it's for us too. So in this day and age where we see technology and this rise of social media, as a social worker and a counselor and someone who deals with mental health, how do you see that impacting people?
I think social media has both positive and negative aspects. So the good is so being on social media has given a voice to the voiceless, right? So kids are better able to express their feelings and emotions through social media. The only difficulty with that is they can do it with a keyboard, but when it comes to physical face-to-face interaction, kids now struggle because their sense of self and their identity is established on a keyboard and on social media, not in reality and real life. So I can tell you anything. I say kids become Superman, or even adults, right? You can say anything when you're typing it on a keyboard, but would you say that face to face? Would you really spout off those negative words face to face? Would you really do those things? And so it's important to kind of monitor social media use and really encourage kids to have interactions face to face so that they know how to communicate effectively with one another and they know how to communicate effectively their authentic self. And that's a real important thing because even for adults, right, if you're a parent and you go on Pinterest and you see all these perfect parents where they have all of these perfect behavior plans or they know exactly what to do. If that were my kid, they would never do that. In reality, that's probably not true, right? That's an inauthentic statement. So you want to encourage your children or your friends or whomever to be as authentic and open and real on social media as possible if you're going to use that as a vessel to communicate. So I tell my kids, could you say that to your grandparents? Would you be able to sit in a room and tell your grandfather that? If you can, then you can put that online. But if not, you probably don't need to be saying that. So it's important for you as parents to kind of check and balance your kids and monitor, encouraging them to be as authentic as possible.
That's so good. And all the kids in the room are like, darn it. Now our parents are going to, they know what to do. And even for myself, I know I can find myself where if I'm on Instagram or Twitter for an extended period of time, I can sometimes, this sounds so weird, but I can like almost mentally feel something off like happening. What kind of effect does it actually have, like a physical effect on our brain?
It does. Like there's lots of studies out that says that the blue light and the exposure to the phone and just the fact that you're sitting for hours doing that, it has impact on the frontal cortex. It has impact on, I could get really technical, but the serotonin and dopamine and how that stuff produces in your body. And all of those chemicals and the way they interact with your body and your brain function has a direct impact on how you feel. So it's important to definitely have social media hours or phone screen time period. You want to make sure that you're limiting that to a set amount of hours so that your children don't get flooded with too much information, one, and then it doesn't impact, if you think about it, kids who are going to bed, it impacts their sleep schedule. Because now if I've been looking and I have all this light in my face, there's evidence that says being on your phone right before bed causes you not to be able to sleep through the night. So we want to make sure we're doing all of the things to monitor those things to stop that from happening.
And now all the parents are going to be like, can you just come to my house and tell my children this so they can know that we're not nuts, No, that's really, really good for all of us because, again, like it is just a totally different, it's a very, technology is so much of a bigger deal now than it used to be. So that's really helpful practices for us to take with us. So kind of on the topic of kids, I know that you work a lot with kids and teens, and so I wonder if you could, to all the parents in the room today who maybe have a child who is showing signs of some mental health struggle, or maybe who has come to their parents and said, I feel sad all the time, or I'm feeling anxious, what advice would you give to the parents in the room today that are facing that?
Start with listening. Hear and validate your kids. A lot of times we are coming to this situation with our children where they're telling us, I'm sad. And you're looking at it like, well, you have a roof over your head. You don't need this. You don't need that. Why are you sad? I don't get it. And the reality of it is you're not supposed to get it. You're supposed to validate it. It's important to honor your children's feelings because they're the expert on them. And they know if something's wrong. They know if something doesn't feel right. So that you trust that your children are the expert on themselves and meet them, again, where they are. So you're going to want to encourage them to be open and talk about it and then partner. I can't fix it. I can go with you. I can support you and I can sit here and listen to you. If you need to tell me all about how you feel sad, I can be present. But knowing mom and dad cannot fix your feelings. And where we make mistakes as parents, and I'm guilty of it as well, I try to fix it. I'm a therapist during the day, but at home, I'm just mom. And I'm like, boy, you need to get it together. Da, 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 da. And then he's like, could I get the therapist, mom? Can you give me the therapist answer? And the therapist answer is, oh, you know what? Your feelings are real. It makes sense to me that you could feel that way. I don't feel that. I have never experienced that, but it doesn't mean that your experience and your feelings aren't valid and aren't real. So now where do we want to go from here? And then we can put together a plan on how to attack it together. Not me saying, well, you're going to go to therapy. Parents sometimes will bring their kids to therapy, and the kid's like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk about this. And so then I have the hard job of saying, hey, your kid is okay. They are sad, but they're okay. They don't need therapy. And then there are times when the kid wants therapy, and the parents are like, no, you're going to tell them my business. If you go to therapy, then CPS is going to end here because parents are worried that they're going to get in trouble. And I'm like, no, it's a partnership. Just because you go to therapy, one, your kid is not crazy because they want therapy. Two, you're not going to get in trouble because it's not about you.
Wow, that's really good. And I love how you said too that trust that your kid is the expert about themselves, because I know sometimes as adults and as parents, it's like we can think we just forget what it was like to be a kid and to be that age. And sometimes it's easy for us to think to not validate what our kids are experiencing, you know?
Or how many times have you had your kid come to you like, well, when I was your age, we did this and we did that. And the kids are like, but mom, it's different. We didn't have social media then. Like I never experienced bullying to the degree that the kids experience it now. Because of social media, they can't escape it. So for us, we could go home and turn off the TV or not look at something, where these kids are inundated with it on a regular basis. So you won't understand it because it's a different experience completely. So it's important to validate that and acknowledge, you're right, I don't get it. I didn't go through that, but let's try to figure it out together.
That's really, really, really good. And just a couple more questions for you. One, I didn't ask you this in the first service, but I was kind of thinking about it. You're talking about how, you've got your kids and it's like your therapist hat's on in the day and then at home your mom, how has this work that you've done and the clients that you've worked with, how has that impacted you personally? And because I imagine it is tough, it's really hard work to enter into people's pain and suffering with them. And this might even be helpful for those of us in the room that are, clearly we're not therapists, but we are walking down this road with people in our life that struggle. How has this impacted you personally? And maybe you can give us some tips on how to be in it for the long haul with people.
The important piece is it does have an impact. There are days when I have to go home and I will cry because of something that a child told me about being hurt. Or I will feel so sad because I've seen people all day who are sad. It's important to do self-care. So when I'm feeling down, I have to remember you have coping strategies. Go to your coping strategies. And as a therapist, any coping mechanism that I've shared in therapy to say, hey, this may work, it's something I've tried. I am a big believer in meditation. I'm a big believer in prayer. I'm a big believer in sitting and journaling and just being one-on-one with yourself. So if you can find your own strategies as you're supporting someone else, use them. Oftentimes you're going to talk to somebody else about their feelings and it may bring up your own emotions. So do a self-check. Check in with yourself. How am I doing? Because I can only be as supportive to someone else as I am to myself. Whatever advice you're giving out, make sure you're taking for yourself. If you're telling your friends, pray on it, then make sure that you're praying over yourself as well. If you're saying, well, just encourage yourself, make sure you're encouraging yourself. So whatever strategies you're giving, make sure you use. And then as far as how therapy changes me, it is so much fun. To be in therapy, especially when I'm working with kids, because one, it keeps me young. I get to feel like I'm a teenager when I work with teens all the time. But I grow, and it's helped me grow as a parent. I've learned that I need to be quiet. Because in therapy, I'll tell kids, y'all, sometimes I forget I'm a therapist, and I just turn into a mom. And having a kid in therapy check me and say, Miss, you're being my mother right now. I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. Don't do that at home either. So the kids that I work with, they help me grow in that way. And then the adults, a lot of times they are praying adults. I have one lady that I see, and before we start any session, she says, you must pray. And so I've grown in my own faith just because she makes me, I'm like, girl, I need to check myself. I probably should do that too. I should think about it like that. And so because of her strong faith and her willingness to be open with me about it, it's helped me develop to grow stronger in my own faith too.
I just love how you just seem like, even you saying like how you've learned so much from your clients and how willing you are to just like allow someone to say, hey, don't be my mom. I think that's so important for all of us to, like, when we're with someone who's struggling, to allow them to be honest and say, quit trying to fix it. Or just the other day, my son, came home from school and is like pouring his heart out to me because he was so frustrated, and I instantly went into fix it mode, and he started to get really upset, and I was like, why are you getting so mad at me? And he's like, because I want you to just listen. And I was like, oh, right. sorry about that. So I love that you're being vulnerable and sharing that with us, that like, yeah, sometimes you just have to take a step back and just listen. That's really, really helpful. So I have just one final question. And again, I wish, even in first service, I wish we could talk for another hour, because has this been helpful for you today? This has just been so incredibly helpful for me, and I know for all of us. I mean, this has been so great. So I guess one final question is, for the people in the room today that are battling with their mental health, whether it's depression or anxiety or a slew of other mental health issues that it could be, kind of in parting words, like, what would you say to them? What would your advice or your encouragement be to people that are in the room today that are facing those challenges?
The main thing I would tell you is you are not alone. There is someone available to you. There are people who are willing to work with you and hear you and listen to you. No one can help you unless you're willing to and are able to open up and share, but you are not alone. And what you're experiencing, chances are, if we throw a rock, there's 10 other people in this room who are experiencing it or have thought about it. So remember, there is help. If you need some resources, there's a really great website called Psychology Today. It's psychologytoday.com. If you're looking for a provider in this area, you can put in what you want. There are different levels of clinicians. So there are psychologists, psychiatrists can prescribe medication, psychologists, licensed professional counselors, and licensed clinical social workers will offer you talk therapy. But there are resources available to you. And if you have insurance, contact your insurance company. I know that some of the biggest fears about getting support for mental health is the cost. There are lots of people who work on a sliding scale in the community, so you are not alone. There is help available. You just have to ask.
Thank you so much. I mean, that is so helpful. Some good practical steps for us too that are in the room, that maybe need to make that next step. So can everyone just give a huge round of applause for Lakeisha?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today with us. So, here's the thing. Doing a series like this, I know that talking about this kind of stuff can be uncomfortable. And I know that sometimes, for you to personally have to take next steps when it comes to your mental health, I know that can be really challenging. So none of us are saying, oh, it's just easy, just do this. We all are aware that is a really, really hard thing to do, and sometimes a really hard thing to talk about. But here's the thing, and I really believe this. I believe that in order for us to be healthy and whole as people, in order for us to be healthy and whole human beings, we have to take our mental health seriously. And just like Keitra said, we would never, if we had diabetes or if we had asthma or any number of physical ailments, we would never hesitate to go to a doctor to get the help that we needed for that. And in the same way, we need to treat our mental health in the same way and know that there are so many people like Lakeisha that are in our community that are doing this hard and important work of mental health and diving in to people's pain and suffering and walking that road with them. And so I am so grateful for all the mental health professionals that are doing this work, because it's vitally, vitally important. And here today, I hope that through this series and through the conversation today, that I hope that empowers you to be able to take your next step, whatever that may be. So for some of you here, maybe your next step is you need to make an appointment with a counselor or a therapist for yourself, or for maybe one of your kids. Maybe that's the next step that you need to make today. And we offer counseling through Icon. Just if you send an email to Icon or go to iconchurch.com/care, and you can shoot out an email, and Dino will be in touch with you to schedule an appointment for you. If after service, if you have any questions for Keitra, I'm sure she'd be more than willing to answer your questions. And like she said, there are plenty of resources in our community for you to be able to find someone who is a good fit for you, a counselor or a therapist or a social worker, someone that you can meet with to help you in your road to healing. I really believe that in order for us to build authentic community with one another, we have to be willing to go down this road. For some of our next step might be that we start finding more practical ways that we can support the loved ones in our lives that are dealing with this. We take the things that Keitra was saying this morning and really apply that and understand that the most important thing that we can do for someone in our life that is struggling with their mental health is to just be present. to be there. Let them know that we're in it for the long haul. We're not going anywhere, that we're not trying to fix it, that we're just here for them. And here's the thing here, clearly we're in church. And so, we absolutely 100% believe in the power of prayer. We believe that God can heal. We absolutely believe those things. And also, sometimes we have to do the hard work of uprooting things. I mean, for me personally, a couple of years ago, I realized I was in a space where I was like, there are so many things from my childhood and things that I have gone through that I have never dealt with, and I couldn't do it on my own. And so I started going to counseling, and I cannot even tell you, it was a game changer for me. And so we will pray and we will believe and we will ask God to walk with us, and we will ask God and believe God for that healing. And at the same time, like Keitra said, we will get in the car and we'll drive to that appointment to meet with that person, because sometimes we need someone who's trained in those areas to be able to help us to uproot those things and to uncover those traumas and to be able to go through that and to be able to find the healing that we need. So here in a second, the band's going to play one final song. And so I would encourage you during that time, use that song just to kind of maybe check in with yourself. Like Keitra was talking about, check in with yourself. Ask yourself some of these questions about how you're doing. How's your mental health? How's your level of anxiety? Have you been feeling depressed? Ask yourselves these questions. And we will have people, a prayer team on the side that are willing to pray with you if you need that. And then maybe after that, maybe you leave here today and you pick up that phone and you make that appointment in order to go down that journey of healing that you so desperately need. So I'm going to go ahead and pray for you, and then we will do one final song. God, I am so grateful.